my name is Allie Schmidt. This is my dad, Dan. He owns Caitlin's Glass.
Thanks, Allie. Things like doors and windows go into making a house. But when it's your home, you expect more, like the great service and selection you'll get from Caitlin's Glass. Vinyl replacement windows from Caitlin's come with a lifetime warranty, including accidental glass breakage replacement. Also ask for custom shower doors and many other products and services. Call 962-1636. Locally owned with local employees for nearly 30 years.
Caitlin's Glass, the clear choice.
Welcome to the BeTempered podcast, where we explore the art of finding balance in a chaotic world.
Join us as we delve into insightful conversations, practical tips, and inspiring stories to help you navigate life's ups and downs with grace and resilience.
We're your hosts, Dan Schmidt and
Ben Spahr.
Let's embark on a journey to live our best lives.
This is BeTempered.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the BeTempered podcast, episode number
64.
64.
Hard to believe.
Yeah, that is hard to believe.
I don't know why I just thought that we're over halfway to 100 now. Like we're getting there.
We were over halfway to 100 at
I'm
episode
saying
52.
I'm just now thinking that we're halfway to 100. I don't know. Just that triple digits, mind-boggling.
So Ben went to Dixie High School.
Yeah. Yep.
Now, it is hard to believe, to be honest with you. I all the stuff we purchased for when we started the podcast, I've got in a bag, and it's sitting at the house, and I hadn't seen it in a while. I saw it sitting there, and I was like, man, that seems like an eternity ago.
Yeah.
You know, that we were recording in the basement and all that stuff. Like, just, man, hard to believe.
Scared to death to put it out there.
Yeah.
Anybody listen.
Yeah, now we don't shut up.
Yeah.
Which leads right into today's podcast episode. So welcome back. Today, Ben and I are going to have a real unfiltered conversation about something that's often avoided, especially with men: vulnerability. We're not just talking about it, we're living it. Every time we sit down behind these microphones and we share our stories, we're choosing to be vulnerable. Whether it's the struggles we've faced, the failures we've had to own, or the moments like my recent experience going through the rite of passage, the 24 hours on my feet, mentally broken down, emotionally stretched. We're learning that strength isn't found in pretending everything's fine. It's found in being honest about the hard stuff. This episode's about opening up, letting people in, and realizing that sharing your story doesn't make you weak. It makes you relatable. It makes you stronger, and it can help someone else find freedom too. So, Ben, with that, why do you think it's so hard for men, especially to open up and share their struggles?
Well, I feel like the word vulnerability is mixed up a lot of time with being weak.
Yeah.
I feel like that's one of the big things, you know. Whenever you're vulnerable, maybe people think that you're complaining or something like that. And I feel like growing up, you were always taught, be strong, you know.
Especially as a young man.
Right. Or whenever you talk about a problem that you had or somebody explains it and you're like, well, how'd you get through it? Pushed it down deep. Yeah. You know, I mean, that's just what you're taught to do. So I feel like that word vulnerability is often misused as weakness and misviewed as weakness. And I think that's one of the big reasons. Yeah,
I agree. I think, you know, I was raised on a farm where it doesn't matter what the weather is. It doesn't matter what's going on, you know, outside of your life or with your friend group. I mean, there's things that have to get done. And so, you know, as a young man, you learn to kind of push those feelings of uncertainty, whatever it might be. You push them down, right? And you just focus on the task at hand and you push through those things. And I think, you know, what I've learned to realize about being vulnerable over the past year and a half or so since we've been doing this podcast is what it does for me, how it makes me feel to talk some of these things out. I mean, the things that we deal with at work, the things that we deal with at home, you know, the stories that we hear sitting here at this table from other people and the challenges and the adversities that a lot of our guests have faced. It really opens you up. And by sharing those stories, I think it helps so many. And I, you know, for me, and I know for you as well, you know, when we get messages from people who are like, man, you know, the story that Sue told last week, you know, I could relate so well because I know someone who's dealing with a pornography addiction, or, young lady may have been battling anorexia, all these things that she went through. And again, the different things that all of our guests have went through, divorce of a family, right? That would happen in your life,
Yep.
right? And, how often have you talked about it?
Right.
And shared how you felt as a young man and those things. And I think by talking about it, that's therapy. Mm-hmm. And it's important for us as men and as women to share those stories, whether it's with a group of people, whether it's with a good friend, a pastor, a counselor, whatever it might be. I think it's important to share that and to not hold that in.
Right. And that's why I feel like it's therapeutic for sure. And it also builds relationships. And I feel like that's one of the other issues with men, and really it's men with vulnerability. Susan, she was just talking about walking out here like, well, that's easy for women to be vulnerable, but for men it's hard. And it's like, we weren't created by God to be that way, and later we'll talk about some Bible verses where God talks about it, that you're supposed to share your burdens and stuff like that. And it's just, I feel like a lot of times that's where vulnerability stops, is where we don't feel comfortable enough building those relationships, or, what will Dan think if I'm vulnerable and I let him know some of the battles I'm facing. And, if we as men got rid of that and we actually opened up, I might realize that you might be dealing or dealt with the same battles that I was facing. And you can tell me how you got through it, or give me advice, or be praying for me. And just feel like it's something we really got to do a better job as men.
I agree. Well, when I was on the rite of passage on that 24-hour trek, and all those men that I was with that were on our team, and we did a lot of time talking, and you could hear other guys having conversations and those guys sharing stories. And I could tell in a lot of their instances, they hadn't told a lot of people those stories. And these were pretty deep, in some cases, some dark things that those men had dealt with. And this was their time where they felt comfortable enough to share it with the guy next to him, knowing that, these 18 other men were going to hear their story. And then from that, we've got a text group, and it's been amazing to read some of these texts where these guys are like, hey, I battled addiction. One of our guys that was in our group, the following Monday from the event, a week later, he checked himself into rehab, and he talked about that in our group text. And, I don't know if that was from coming out of that 24-hour experience and the stories that he heard from other guys being vulnerable, that it made that switch in his head where he thought, I know I need help, and I know I'm not the only one going through it, because I just went through this challenge in my life with these other men, and they were open to the things that they have went through and the challenges they had faced, and it's time for me to get my life straight. But right there is a perfect example of how 18 men were vulnerable with their stories, and from that, one guy checks himself into rehab to better himself and his family.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. So I think it's powerful. And, you always talk about the Galatians 6 verse 2, carry each other's burdens, and in this way you'll fulfill the law of Christ. I mean, it's right there in the book.
Right. And that's what I feel like the Bible, for me personally, that's what I try to, when I'm in the Word, that's when I feel like I'm on fire with life. And the other one is the 2 Corinthians 12, 9 and 10. But he says to me, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all more gladly of my weakness, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. For the sake of Christ, then I am content with my weakness, insults, hardships, persecution, calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong. And I just, there's sometimes in the podcast where we talk about not dumping stuff on our wife and stuff like that. And I agree 1,000% with it. But I feel like when I am vulnerable with my wife, you know what I mean? Like those moments, that builds on our relationship. And, Lisa and I, we have conversations about that all the time. That, the vulnerability part is what makes her feel safe in our relationship. We last episode we talked about she was having problems feeling safe in her relationship, and so it's one of those things that whenever we talk about it on the podcast about not dumping on your wife, it's like I agree 100%. Like not every day going home and dump stuff on your wife, but in the same thing, you need to be very vulnerable with your wife, in my opinion.
Yeah. And share some of the struggles that you may have faced during that day of work
Right.
or whatever it might be. It's important to have those conversations. You're right. Another one is Ecclesiastes 4, verse 9 through 10. Two are better than one. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. You know, again, maybe that's your wife that you have that conversation with. Maybe it's your friend, maybe it's your mentor, maybe it's your counselor. But there's someone out there that you should be able to confide in to have those difficult conversations, or maybe addictions that you're facing, or maybe you've lost a loved one, and you just don't know how to deal with that, how to move past, the pain and the struggle of losing that person. But there's someone out there that can be those ears and that can listen, and it's important to be vulnerable and to share that story, because you're not the only one dealing with that.
Right.
A lot of people are. Another one's James 5, verse 16. Therefore, confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed. There it is. Proverbs 27, verse 17. As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. We talk about that a lot.
Yeah.
And it all goes back to just, being open and being honest and finding those people. And again, to that ROP Team 12, all my brothers out there, like I said, I think in some instances that was maybe the first or second time they've told some of those stories. But to see what's come from that, and all these guys are going to be on the podcast, or a lot of them are, and going to share their story. And so I'm excited for that, because, boys, there's some powerful ones, of these guys. So it's important.
And I feel like, you and I in our weight loss journeys and our life transformation journeys, I feel like, at least I shouldn't speak on your behalf, but, we looked at podcasts for inspiration, right? To find, what other people are doing to better themselves, or, motivational speakers. Like, you have a whole list of podcasts that you listen to help you get through it. And I feel like a lot of times podcasts almost used to fill a gap where that was, where maybe the relationships aren't built to where you're able to be vulnerable, but hey, I can relate to this guy and what he's dealing with, how he got through it. So we go back and we watch. And, that was one of the big things for our podcast was, we want to help one person.
Yeah.
And that was one of the big things why we started doing the interviews and stuff like that, is because you have people coming in here that's brave and laying it all out there, being vulnerable about different things that they're going through. And we've known from messages that people are gaining stuff from that.
Yeah.
From them being vulnerable, they're, dealing with the same things. Now they realize there's light at the end of the tunnel and stuff like that. So yeah, I feel like vulnerability is a big part of this podcast.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Excuse me. It's powerful. And so, somebody that there's a story out there, a former NBA player, and he may still play, Kevin Love.
Yeah.
Does he still play?
He just got cut, but yeah, he's going to sign somewhere else.
Yeah.
He got traded, then got cut, but yes.
But that was kind of a big story back in the day, 5 or 6 years ago, where he had a panic attack during a game. Here's this guy, I don't know what, he's 6'10", big guy, very successful, and he had a panic attack in the game, and he opened up through an article that he wrote called "Everyone is Going Through Something." And that response that he received from that was overwhelming, because many said that his honesty saved lives and changed conversations about mental health and professional sports. And it shows how vulnerability from leaders can have a ripple effect, and so you take these professional athletes who, everybody puts on this pedestal, like they live this perfect life. They're making all this money. They're all this talent. They've always been told how great they are, but they're still human. Mm-hmm. They still have faced adversities in their life, maybe from their childhood, or, all these different things. And for him to come out and to own it and say, I had a panic attack, and this is why.
Yeah.
Because I'm battling some demons. I'm battling depression, and that was a big step for someone like him to do that. So, powerful from a professional athlete.
Yeah, we had the same story in our church. Our pastor, he actually took a sabbatical because he had a panic attack and an anxiety attack, and when he came, before he left, he actually had a conversation about what he's dealing with, and. When he came back, he explained why he was having that. He was feeling like, we're all saved by Jesus, by the grace of God and everything. He said that he was still, even as a pastor and understanding what he was, dealing with every day, but he still felt like he had to achieve something to get that. You know what I mean? Like, even though he's a pastor, he understands the story. He understands that Jesus died for all of us and our sins, and he still battles trying to feel like every day like you're trying to earn the grace when the grace is just there for you to take, And, I know hearing that, it set our church on fire.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody was starting to be very vulnerable. Well, why were you able to be vulnerable? Because the leader of the church was like, hey, I'm battling this, I know the word. I went to school, studied the word, and you would never doubt for a minute that man's a Christian. I mean, he was just an amazing man on fire. But the fact that he was vulnerable, he's dealing with the same thing that, I deal with, that a lot of people deal with, that you just try to do enough, like you just try to, oh, that's not good enough. I got to do better. To earn the grace. And yeah, it set our church on fire when that happened.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Vulnerability is not weakness. It's bravery. When we share what's really going on, we give others permission to be real too. We break chains of shame, isolation, and pride. If you're listening today, we challenge you to open up to someone you trust. Reach out, speak up, and remember, your story could be the key to someone else's breakthrough. None of us are meant to carry life alone. We were designed to walk together, to sharpen each other, and to lift one another up. So from Ben and I today, go out and be vulnerable, go out and talk to someone, go out and share your story, and go out and be tempered.
Hi, my name is Allie Schmidt. This is my dad, Dan. He owns Catron's Glass.
Thanks, Allie. Things like doors and windows go into making a house. But when it's your home, you expect more, like the great service and selection you'll get from Catron's Glass. Vinyl replacement windows from Catron's come with a lifetime warranty, including accidental glass breakage replacement. Also ask for custom shower doors and many other products and services. Call 962-1636. Locally owned with local employees for nearly 30 years.
Catron's Glass, the clear choice.